Good morning, my spiritual siblings. How are you today on this glorious day? We are very blessed to have this weather and to be together through it. There has been some blockage around the recording of my talks here. It's about the third or fourth one hasn't been recorded, and I'd ask you to just send some energy in that direction to see maybe we can clear something here. I'd like to know how many of you were here the last time I spoke? About half. So I've been back and forth in my mind about my talk today. I wrote this neat little sermon, Community, What Has Love Got to Do with It? And then I thought, the last time I spoke, I dropped what I had written and I just spoke about what was going on for me. And I thought, well, now it's several months later, maybe it would be good if I sort of had some closure with where I left off to where I am now, because lots has happened in that interim. And so I haven't decided, and I'm going to just take a moment to see what the choice is. Yeah, I think I'll just speak extemporaneously as best as I can. So for those who weren't here, I spoke about a number of things that had brought me into the dark night of the soul. And so for me, what that is ego, pride, fear takes me to a very dark place. And there were a number of things that were happening that triggered that for me. My mom, who's 91, she was having terrible arthritic shoulder pain, and I was concerned that she was going to get a cortisone shot, and the last time she was at the doctor having stitches removed for something, she passed out and had a vasovagal reaction that took 2.5 hours for her to come out of this fainting spell. And I was very concerned that this might happen again. Well, it didn't happen. She got the cortisone shot, but the downside is it didn't do anything for her. So she's still in a lot of pain. And you might remember, those of you who heard me, I was taking her down to Florida for the month of January. Me and her in a cottage, 450 square feet, 24/7. So if that doesn't produce some fear, I don't know what would. And so we went, we had a lovely time. I had done my work, my inner work, to recalibrate and balance myself for this experience. And part of that work was accepting who she is on her terms, but also creating boundaries for myself, and more than that, letting go of the guilt that was attached to me taking care of myself. Creating boundaries is not so much of a problem for me anymore, but then I always have guilt. I should be home, I should go back, I should leave whatever I'm doing to get back to her. She doesn't care, she doesn't know, she doesn't, it's not that she's not cognizant, she doesn't know that I'm experiencing this. She wants me to go and have the life. She's 91, I'm not. So during this period, I was able to have this wonderful, healthful separation, which was a very important buffer zone for me to be able to spend that much time with her in small quarters, and it was very rainy and cold, so we didn't go out a whole lot. But she also did not want to go to the senior center, which we had agreed on, so then I became the cruise director, which I really didn't want to have to do. So I had to do that much more for her. And there was that moment of contraction, annoyance, I'm being put upon. And I breathed in the love that I know is there. See, when I go to the dark night of the soul, I'm walking away from God. I'm walking away from the love. And that's really the crux of the matter for me. I also was dealing with a Volkswagen that has that debacle about something being wrong of a diesel engine and so on and so forth. And I was really annoyed because I paid for the car, I bought it I was going to drive it for 20 years and all this kind of stuff. And then this happened. It's like, really? It's sort of like the recordings. Really? And so I went through the whole thing of, should I do a class action? Should I do an individual? Should I go trade in the car and see what I could get? Well, I went down that path, and it was bogus. But what it did was, it brought me back to my car and saying, I really love my car. I really love this car. and it'll get fixed and it'll be worked out. But first there was the rejection of this stupid car. Look what this company did to my car, and that all being put upon. And so I found in that experience that I could really just be with the enjoyment of what that car is and let all the peripheral stuff go. And that smoothed the path for me. I also had been dealing with a cement contractor, which in and of itself, you can get the idea, the concrete experience I was having. He poured the concrete. I had 3 problems when I went in, and when he finished, I had the exact same 3 problems when I came out. We went around and around and around. He said, okay, I'm going to take out these 4 sections of concrete, and I'm going to replace them. Great. In the process, he cut the wire that opened and closed my garage, so I had the inconvenience of not having my remote. I had to get an electrician to come to put in rewiring. It was a whole thing. And then he poured the cement, and his worker who I was kind of working with, and he wasn't around, he'd come and he'd go. It was clear that they were doing exactly what they did the last time. And what we know is what I have experienced many times in my life. If I always did what I always do, I always get what I always got. So there was, when he did come back, there was the argument over whether or not the pitch was enough. Now, I'm a carpenter. I know what a level looks like, and I know where a bubble should be if you want pitch. And the bubble was barely touching the farthest line. So we had an argument over that. Long story short, he stormed away. I was annoyed, he was annoyed. The cement was put in place as he described it should be done, because he knows, he's been doing it 30 years, he knows. As it was drying, my next door neighbor ran across it, not knowing it had been done, which blows my mind because the cement was missing. So now I have tire tracks on this cement. And it's exactly as it was before. And now he doesn't want to pay for the electrician, and he has my mother, my 91-year-old mother, to write a waiver so that he will pay the $600, his portion of it, so that I shouldn't go after him in case of anything. It's extortion, essentially. So you can see how aggravated I am over this concrete experience that has left me $13,000 paid for work that's not correct. What am I to do? Shall I take him to court? That was my first thought. Small claims court. I'm right. I know I'm right. And anybody who hears this will know it, and I will be awarded blah, 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 blah. Ego, fear of not getting what was promised me. And so this was really raising my blood pressure, figuratively and literally. And so when I was with my mother in Florida, I had a conversation with her about it, and she said, I really don't want you to have to go there. Your life is busy enough. You don't need more stress in your life. You have a lot of responsibilities. You win some, you lose some. And I really took that under advisement because I want to protect my mother. I want to protect our investment. That's my nature. And so I had to do deeper work. And I was remembering conversations I had with the concrete guy about his father and this and that and all this stuff. And he's got a real, in my assessment, a real wounded child in him that's got to be right, that has a lot of fear. And I can identify. And this is where I had to go to get to the compassion and the love of this poor soul who I perceive as wounded. I may be correct, I may be incorrect, but the point is it gave me access to let go of what I was harboring that created discord. He's gone, he's done his work, I don't know what he's thinking, it doesn't matter, but I was living in this upset. And so for me to find the love in my heart is the key. It's the key for me to get to where I need to go to get out of the dark night of the soul. So there won't be any litigation. and there will be 3 errors in my cement. And I can only think of the Native Americans who, when they would make rugs, always left a section, a corner of the rug with a mistake, and that is to let out the evil spirits. I also talked a little bit about my wife now making more money than me, which is a wonderful thing, good for her. But I've never been in a relationship where I wasn't the breadwinner or the one who made the most money and I could, you know. And so I had to really work that through, and it was all about my ego. Losing my position, the perceived position in my family. And I've started to really embrace, you know, she's 14 years younger than me. It's a different setup. I'm closer to retirement than she is, and it's really kind of a welcomed respite that I don't have to struggle to always not even be ambitious, just to stay ahead of the curve. Because I'm not that ambitious, really, and that's maybe part of my problem, I don't know. So I've resolved that piece of the puzzle. I think I had mentioned Social Security, where since I just turned 62, I thought I better go to Social Security and do whatever I need to do. I have my marital name from 1972, and I was married to a man that I never changed at Social Security, but they would send things out and I would get them no matter where I was. So I thought, well, it's no big deal. I went to change my name, and I had everything in order, from changing it from my middle name to Jeep, which is my legal name, and so on and so forth. She says, yes, but I don't have anything for your married last name. How do I know it's you? And I was stunned. Fear. I'm not going to get what's coming to me, because if I don't have the correct last name, I don't get any Social Security benefits. So I was freaking out. Put everything in order. I now have the paperwork that connects me to my married name, and that will get worked out. But again, it was this pride and ego and fear that kept me down. So this is all happening at the same time. And then I talked, I think, rather extensively about this book launch that's happening next weekend for a book about a theater company that I was in, a women's theater company that I was involved with in the early years, the formative years, one of the original members. And I was fearful around how I would be portrayed in this book, because I was very, or not portrayed at all, more specifically. And I talked a little bit about a number of the people became rather successful and famous, and one woman has a show on Broadway. It's not her first, and this is the woman who I had been in an affair with, who I didn't think would make anything of herself. And I broke up with her, one of the reasons. So she was also chubby, see. So this was where I was 30 years ago. And that was all about ego and pride. And of course now she's, very successful on Broadway, which is it's just like the irony doesn't get past me. But anyway, this book is coming out. I got the book, and I was right. I am not portrayed either accurately or enough. There was one show we did called Cinderella, the Real True Story, and I was the princess in this story, if you could imagine that, with the crinolines and the whole thing. And they have 6 photos of people from Cinderella, the Real True Story, and I had a huge role in that play, and there's no picture of me. So this brought up all the insecurities and the feelings of never getting enough, not enough recognition, not enough acknowledgement. So that took me a few more weeks to go deeper into my soul, my soulfulness and my love that was lacking, especially when I think about going to this big party, because I also talked about the sexual escapades that I had been involved with at the time, where there were people who were hurt. Whether or not they signed on is not the issue. I was having sex with them and just not caring a great deal about who they were, because I saw things through the lens of me. And so I thought when I went to this party, I would just look around the room and say, oh, I need to apologize to that one, I need to apologize to that one, I need to make amends over there. And so I really started to think about some of the things that I've learned over the years, some of the things that I've read about my approach to my spiritual growth. And I was thinking about the Rabbi Marshall Meyer, who, a very heroic spiritual leader who saved Jews during the, non-Jews as well, during the Argentinians' dirty war of the 1970s. And he said, through the whole Torah, we constantly read that we must treat the foreigner as a brother, that we must liberate the oppressed, dress the naked, feed the starving, and fight for justice. It is the Jewish obligation to be sensitive to the needs of all people who are hungry and downtrodden. And this is something that I had been thinking about when I was dealing with the cement contractor, and I was thinking about the people who I would see at this book launch. And I was also thinking about what Karen Armstrong has said in Islam, A Short History, that a Muslim's first duty is to build community in which wealth, they're discussing wealth as money, I'm thinking of wealth as love, that it's fairly distributed, that prostrations during prayer were designed to counter hard arrogance, and that teaching Muslims to lay aside their pride and selfishness. And this is what I was thinking about when I was thinking about the Social Security issue, the financial insecurity from paying the contractor, the spiritual insecurity of meeting people I haven't seen in 30 years, and now I'm a minister, and they're going to be like, whoa. Yeah. You know, because these are artists, these are creative people from the East Village, and a lot of them are severe lefties, which is great. But that doesn't necessarily they believe in God the way I do. Or they believe in God in such a way that I can be access to them. I become the other. We were the counter subculture of the time, which doesn't really exist anymore. And so how will they see me? How will they experience me? And this is part of the dark night of the soul. It's about me. So what I'm trying to express here is that I have to allow the God in me to experience the God in you, in them, to bring it all together so that there is no you and me, there is the we. That we are all the same, that I am the same as they are. Doesn't matter the particulars, it doesn't matter the race, the color, the creed, none of that matters. What matters is the love that comes out of the God in me that I deeply believe in and appreciate. And Rumi, the Sufi poet, said, look for the soul, you become the soul. Hunt for the bread, you become the bread. Whatever you look for, you are. And that resonated very deeply. The more I'm looking for recognition, the more egotistical I am. And the humility that comes from letting go of these things is the balm for my heart. It is the thing that allows me to be exactly who I am, exactly where I am, and allow you to be exactly who you are. I don't need to change anyone. Marianne Williamson, in Return to Love, wrote, in order to love purely, we must surrender our old ways of thinking. The mind that is separate from God has forgotten how to check in with love before it saunters out into the world. And in my case, swaggers out into the world. I must first embrace the understanding of my own culture, my own background. And even if I don't like where I came from, that's the beginning of internal kinship, a spiritual empathy that I can then turn outward. The self-love that I have is integral to loving others. And that is when I can begin to embrace the culture of others, the socioeconomic difference, the racial, the ethnic or religious differences, the variation on sexual orientation, or anything else that makes them, the other, as I'm afraid of being made into, the other. The us and them mentality invents the illusion of power and superiority. which usually manifests itself through a sense of fear and insecurity. So all of this I wrap together, and I think about one of the things I said last time about the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is if the butterfly flaps its wings in one area of the world, does it affect unrest in other areas of the world? Does my unrest affect Syria? And I thought very deeply about that, and I thought, yes, it does. Because I'm breathing the air of Buddha as you are. I'm breathing the air of Jesus as you are. I'm breathing the same air as Einstein and all the other people that have come before us and delivered us information and spiritual significance in ways we hadn't had before. And yes, we are connected. So my fluttering of my anger and discord and fear affects any other unrest in the world. So it's important, integrally important, for me to solve that in myself, to let go of that, to find the peace in my heart so that I can love purely, as Marianne Williamson says. And so I ask you these specific questions. What loving spiritual philosophy can surround you, me, in my transactions and my relations? What can you or I do in service of love? How can you, we, bring more love to all of our dealings? Professional, political, personal, familial. What do I need to embrace to become an integrated individual, a positively participating member in life? And I was remembering William James, who wrote The Varieties of Religious Experience, what he wrote: seek out that particular mental attitude which makes you feel most deeply and vitally alive, along with which comes the inner voice which says, that is the real me. And when you have found that attitude, follow it. And here are my closing thoughts. Let us love beyond our limits. Let us forgive beyond our injury. Let us learn beyond our yearning. Let us reach beyond our resources. Let us become who we really are. And so it is.